Insurance isn't gonna pay for that.
D-Town. And most important, of all, because I think I look good in a helmet. Ah, smell that, Rippers.
Too late to ask for directions? Move or be moved! do you have against quality vehicles? This is gonna blow, isn't it? Who wants a few new holes?
Quint, where you at, bud? Quint? Buddy? Quint, if you can hear me, I'll meet you inside, okay? Shoot. I hope he's okay.
Give up your strength! I can't make it stop! I need to run over them faster! What do you have against quality vehicles?
Yeah, what is it? Another prisoner shipment?
Let me in. The password is... honk, shoe, me.
Bingo!
Come on in. You never can be too careful with vault hunters running around. These passwords have gotten weird too. They used to be simple. Hail the Ripper Queen. Easy. But then Driller Hole started sleeping in an old-timey nightcap and demanding cutesy catchphrases, some of which were super copyrighted. And the stuff we're doing in here, it ain't cutesy. This ain't no honk shoe evil facility anyhow. You ask me, an adorable password is a morale killer. How are you supposed to rip a guy when you're thinking of someone in button-up pajamas blowing cartoon bubbles in their sleep? It doesn't make sense. I had some great password ideas that Driller Hole shot down. Ah, shit, you're a vault hunter! Damn my chatty nature! Ah.
Riverhead, hit the floor in 3, 2.
Well, there's our boyo. On his best behavior.
Tell me where your monkey queen is and I'll let you live. Okay, I won't. But tell me anyway.
Zane, you're kind of a pain to find.
Join the party, have you? Here for some of Alice's blood?
I'm here to take you back. Promise, Levain.
Not so fast. The Ripper Queen's bringing prisoners to this shithole. We need to end her and her plans right quick. So pitch in with these Rippers or go kick dirt.
So many tunnels. It's like a Ripper drill depot.
They just keep coming!
Hey, come here real quick. Got something I want to tell you.
At least I know one way to shut them up.
This guy's so hilarious.
Pure class.
There, guys, you gotta
Now
see
we've
this.
got to blow the lid off the Ripper Queen's Nightmare Factory.
More fun if you add a co-op feature. I would pick Resident Evil 5 any day over this. Hell, I had more fun playing Dead Space 3 with a friend than any single Borderlands game. That is not a joke. I am not exaggerating. And you have to understand, we now live in the era of friends
Idiot. Now get to hacking that jammer.
like Borderlands anymore, when it feels like every handful of weeks there's a new flavor of the month game that comes out that is expressly made for you to just fuck around with your buddies and have fun. Now, before I get into any of the specific problems of Borderlands 4, I do want to address a couple things. First of all is a little bit of an update on the whole YouTube views situation. So, Josh Strife Hayes figured out that the reason that YouTube views are so low across the site is because specifically desktop PC views have cratered. Now, feel free to call me a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think suddenly on August 10th, everyone's desktop PC exploded or people just decided to stop watching YouTube. The most popular theory right now as to why this is the case is YouTube just quietly decided to stop counting viewers that have any form of ad blocker on as views. Now, if you're a corpo shill, which I doubt is anybody watching this video for being real, you could say that YouTubers don't deserve the ad revenue from a video view where the user didn't view an ad. Okay, sure, let's just say that's fair. Why the hell would they not count it as a view entirely? Especially because it's obvious that the algorithm has not been adjusted to reflect this change. So now we have at least a month, if not a full year's worth of videos, which I'm not going to get into that, but for some reason, this is also connected to the restricted mode thing. People are not getting recommended like any videos being made in the past year, with maybe some exceptions. Just check out your recommended sidebar on your computer and look, how many of those videos are from a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and how many of you are getting recommended videos you've already seen, yet it doesn't show the red bar at the bottom signifying that you've watched it. It's obvious that whatever Indians and, you know, praise Vishnu, praise India and all that, clearly they're the future of America, etc., etc. It's clear that whatever brave brown individuals working at YouTube broke something, and they have no idea how the algorithm works, so they didn't adjust anything else to reflect this new, more realistic view count. So now nobody's videos are getting shared in the algorithm anymore. Obviously, I'm not going to ask people to turn off ad block. I think that's absurd. Nobody wants to watch these dog shit ads on YouTube. I'll leave it completely up to you if you'd like to whitelist my channel specifically for ad block, but even if, you know, 1,000 of you do that, that's not nearly enough to make a difference. Ultimately, this is on YouTube to fix the problem. Okay, this is the last time I will harass you about low view counts until there is a major update like YouTube reverts this stuff. It's clear that hyping videos did absolutely nothing because my Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta Remake was actually in YouTube's top 100 most hyped videos, and yet it barely got any views from that. Maybe 5 to 10,000 at the most. So thank you for introducing yet another useless feature, YouTube. Alright, back to the Borderlands 4 review, if we can even call it that. I don't think Borderlands has anything inherent to it that makes it more fun with friends. It's just a game that you can play with friends. In fact, I only played Borderlands 4 with my friends for about 8 hours, and I ended up playing the rest of the game by myself about 20 more hours. I was having more fun playing by myself, and I'll tell you why. It's because the more people you play with, the more badass enemies spawn, and enemy health is scaled anyway with each player. So everything feels like a goddamn bullet sponge in this game. How the fuck do brain-dead normie NPC motherfuckers find it fun to shoot a guy in the face 500 times before he dies? Genuinely, how is that compelling on any level? And the thing is, I'm sure there's some people like, oh, you guys just sucked. Or again, you just didn't even try to have fun. You didn't min-max your build or whatever, even though those were the early levels, so you can't even really min-max. Well, when I played the rest of the game by myself, I did min-max for shotgun damage, and there were multiple points in the game where I could 1 or 2 tap any non-mini-boss enemy type in the game by clicking on their head. And the game still wasn't fun. I'll tell you why. Because it's completely brain dead. All I was doing was casually strolling around and just click, 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 click over and over again. This is just absolute brain rot. And the thing is, the shooting doesn't even feel that good, and a big part of that is because of the horrific performance. This game relies so heavily on frame generation to get a workable frame rate, even at 1440p. We're not even talking 4K. Most of my playtime was done on medium-low settings with DLSS on, and still the fucking frame rate is all over the goddamn place. Oh, this is on a 3080, by the way, and it certainly wasn't being bottlenecked by my Ryzen 9 5900X CPU. Medium low on a game that looks like it came out over a decade ago. This is a cel-shaded, like, comic booky cartoon art style. Why the hell does it have such insanely high system requirements? There's an insane amount of input lag, and a lot of the guns in this game have slow projectile speeds to match, so it's hard to even fucking hit something directly in front of you because there's such of a delay from the moment you click on the mouse and the bullet actually hits the target. I mean, I'm missing point-blank shotgun shots to the face, and I know there's gonna be people who say skill issue, whatever, but it's not like I was losing. I didn't even give a fuck that I missed half the time because this game's not fun. Now, of course, Randy Pitchford, or as I like to call him, Randy Pitchberg, for no particular reason, was having a bitch fit on Twitter because people are constantly pointing out how horribly his game runs, and he's making all sorts of excuses. And hey, cool it with the transphobic remarks, bro. Well, sorry, Randy, your movie bombed, your game sucks, I'm not even convinced that you're human, so sit down and shut up as Synthetic God dismantles your newest baby. I'm totally sure he's gonna watch this video, guys, definitely. This game has absolutely no substance at all, and that is not new for this series. It has always been this way. This has nothing to do with political propaganda, and everything to do with the actual gameplay loop being fundamentally unsatisfying. And I know it's subjective. I know there's some fucking retards who are gonna think this is the best shit ever to play with your buddies, and you've always had fun, and you sink in hundreds of hours trying to get the perfect god roll on whatever gun that drops. And look, I'm no stranger to this series, even though I don't like loot games. I put over 500 hours in Destiny 2 when the Forsaken expansion came out. But Destiny actually has good shooting mechanics. Borderlands does not. It has never felt good. It doesn't matter if there's technically over 50 enemy types when they all functionally do the same shit, which is basically nothing. Just stand around and let them shoot you in the head. Even the ones that rush at you and are harder to shoot, who cares? You just back up and air dash or hover over their heads. Or hell, you could just take the hit. It doesn't even matter if you go down in like 3 or 4 hits. As long as you can kill a minor enemy, you just come right back up anyway. There's no consequences for bad gameplay. And you could say, oh, just play it on hard mode. But how would that make this game any more fun? If anything, it'd make it worse, because then, if it ever becomes truly challenging, I just jump up onto a rooftop, crouch, and just peek out and click, 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 click. It's the same fucking gameplay. There's no level design. There's no encounter design. The enemy variety is virtually meaningless, except maybe flying enemies could hit me with my camping rooftop strategy. You're just doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Every encounter feels exactly the same. This is like the video game equivalent of an MMO in the worst way possible, in the sense that I'm just spamming all my abilities as soon as the cooldowns are up, right? There's no reason not to use your grenade or your heavy ordnance every time it comes off cooldown, because the cooldowns are so short anyway. The same goes for each character's special ability. I can't speak for all of them, but Vex's Incarnate is just a flat buff to my character, so I should use it every available opportunity, especially when the cooldown's only 1 minute, and I expect it out to last a really long time. This is brain dead. Utterly, utterly brain dead gameplay, which would be fine if it was like addicting and really tight and satisfying, but I just don't think it is. There's no reason to play Borderlands over something like Destiny or hell, even like Deep Rock Galactic. I'd maybe even stretch and say Earth Defense Force is more satisfying, except that this is a new release, and, you know, the normie casuals who have to buy every fucking game as soon as they come out, or they'll have FOMO. They gotta get this shit. Support Randy Pitchford Stein's fucking addiction to CP, allegedly, of course. No, actually, they were all adults, and it was for artistic purposes. No, this series sucks, man. If you really wanted like a normal analytical review from me, originally I did record about 15 to 20 minutes really dissecting why Borderlands is unsatisfying from a video game perspective. I realized I'm basically just preaching to the choir, and there's no reason this video needs to be 45 minutes long or even longer than that, because ultimately I think anyone who has any amount of taste already agrees with me that Borderlands sucks, and kind of always has. I mean, sure, we could spend a lot of time dissecting why the combat arenas are virtually all the same, and all that matters is the placement of explosives, or how loot drops are fundamentally unsatisfying because epics in this game drop so commonly that there's no reason to ever take a look at a green, a blue, especially not a white. And legendaries are so insanely rare, it was driving me insane. Over the course of the first 15 hours of gameplay, I only got 1 legendary to drop, and it wasn't even a gun, it was a grenade. And over the course of 28 hours, I only got to touch 8 legendaries. 4 out of those 8 were from golden keys. Oh, and for the little slimy turd on top of the shit cake, 2 of those 8 legendaries were the same goddamn shotgun, one of which was a quest reward. So you're hearing that right. Only 3 legendaries dropped from chests or enemies in 28 hours. And it gets even worse the more I think about it. This game has these huge boss fights, and they're pretty good, actually. The Callus boss fight took me 3 tries because she actually killed me a couple times when she didn't have any minions spawn. So I actually had to pay attention and not just turn my brain off and mindlessly shoot her and spam grenades and all that stuff. So I liked that first fight. But you spend about 5 minutes shooting this massive bullet sponge that has these Dark Souls-esque attacks, and then it drops worse loot than a randomly generated world boss in the sandbox. I'm not joking. Consistently, I got more epics from randomly generated sandbox activities than the main story bosses in this game. I feel like I could complain about this game all day, truly. So instead, I'm going to try and condense my complaints into a series of bullet points really quickly for you. 1, as I already stated, the shooting isn't fun. The enemies are either extreme bullet sponges or die in 1 or 2 shots if you're min-maxed. 2, the enemy variety may seem pretty wide at first, but in reality, there's only about 4 or 5 total enemy functions amongst those 50 types. And you basically deal with them all the same. You figure out where the weak spot is, then you just click on it until it dies. 3, the level design and encounter design is meaningless because every arena is functionally the same. Just a big empty circle with some explosive barrels, some of which you can pick up and throw at enemies, but it does barely any damage. 4, the movement mechanics are pretty solid, but they're completely unnecessary. You don't have to slide, you don't have to double jump and hover, you don't have to use the lasso to get across the arena, even though you can cancel out of it with a double jump and save a shit ton of momentum, which is actually really fun, but functionally is never required or even incentivized over the course of the game. 5, despite the series' reputation of having 10 billion guns, functionally there's maybe 30 tops. I have to give Borderlands 4 a little bit more credit in this department though compared to previous entries in the series, as clearly there has been an effort to further distinguish the guns from one another instead of just stats. Like there's a lot of under barrel attachments and other alternate functions on guns now, and to even further distinguish the guns from one another, they now can have licensed parts from other manufacturers. So a Jacobs gun could have a part from Vladoff or Hyperion, etc., etc. So all of that is good, but it still does not solve the problem that 95% of guns are still the basic ass assault rifle, SMG, pistol, shotgun, sniper rifle that you see in every single shooter ever made. There is very little effort into making truly unique guns. Even the legendaries that I got a chance to try didn't seem very unique. And I'm not going to sit here and give you a shit ton of examples of video games that have actually creative guns, but the most obvious examples would be Half-Life 1 and 2, or if we're talking about games I grew up with, of course Ratchet and Clank, even though technically none of those games are FPSs, they're action platformers, and obviously that genre has a lot more freedom to have creative weaponry given that you literally dodge bullets in those games, so your own projectiles can be much slower and have a very wide variety of functions. But still, I think they could do better than this. Even the energy weapons, a lot of what they do just isn't that interesting, like shooting a bunch of little globules that explode or a huge orb that flies slow. I don't know, it just doesn't feel good, though most of the shooting in this game doesn't feel good. 6, the character abilities just feel like win buttons, but not as visually or gameplay-wise even as satisfying as ultimates in a hero shooter. Yes, you can use them much more frequently than ultimates in any of these other games, but the actual effect is not nearly as impressive. Now, obviously, there's a wide variety of abilities, and I spent 99% of my playtime just using Incarnate on Vex, so maybe one of the 12 abilities is really cool, but from what I've seen, at least from what my buddies played as well, none of them were really that satisfying. I don't know. At best, it does change your playstyle for a little bit, like Rafa has one where you slice people up with blades, but this is a shooter. You want to be shooting people, I would think. And my ability was just kind of a somewhat significant buff to my overall gameplay. Like, I'm not gonna downplay it and say it didn't make much of a difference because it auto-reloaded my guns, it did a lot of damage, and it did various other little minor things that helped my overall gameplay. But I still played the game the exact same way while my ultimate was active versus when it wasn't. So I can't really say it made the game that much more fun. 7, this game has level scaling. Now, I know some people are going to argue this is a good thing for a looter shooter because let's say I'm level 25, I go to a zone where the enemies are only level 15, I kill them super easily, and the loot drops are only level 15, so I'm wasting my time. Okay, I think that's fine, to a degree, right? Because then, after you beat the game and you want to go back and do all of the side quests, at least you have a real reason to do those side quests because it'll always drop loot at your level. I think that part of it is fine. However, what I do have a problem with is that not only is there level scaling, but there's also a minimum level of the enemies as well. So I tried to bum rush my way through the story past the 15-hour mark, right? Because I was pretty sick of this game. I wanted to finish it. Lo and behold, the final zone of the game, the enemies spawn at level 35 at minimum. I was only level 29 when I got here. So I actually had to leave and level grind which took a long fucking time because despite enemies being a higher level than you, they actually don't really give you a noticeable higher amount of experience points. So this is just straight up padding. I can't even go around and do quests that I'm over leveled for and get a bunch of EXP reward from said quests because everything scales to my level. So no matter what I did, it was going to take me the same amount of fucking time to get to roughly level 32 when I decided I was good enough to finish the game. And the thing is, you could just say, oh, get good, kill these enemies who are 5 levels higher than you or more. That's virtually impossible. If the enemies have a skull next to their level, that means you're gonna get fucked. So this complaint is less about level scaling and more about the forced padding in this game that I was required to go out of my way and spend about 3 hours grinding just to finish the game. Now, despite my obvious distaste for this game, I decided to do my due diligence and actually play some of the post-game. And a few of my problems were slightly alleviated. Namely, the loot problem is probably the biggest fix, as the new Ultimate Vault Hunter mode replaces New Game Plus. It seems like Gearbox tried to lazily copy off of Destiny here, where instead of running strikes or raids, you redo story missions with multiple modifiers on them, and you fight super hard versions of the various bosses spread throughout the game. The thing is, New Game Plus is obviously superior to this because it's only one story mission and one boss a week, because they try to turn this slop into live service. And as for the Ultimate Vault Hunter mode thing, essentially you have to earn Ultimate Vault Hunter levels, and each level makes all of the enemies spread across the world more difficult. The problem is, for no conceivable reason, it also ups the level of everything in the world on top of that. So even though there's already level scaling, with just one level of what I'll just say UVH, so I don't have to keep saying it over and over again, the enemies went from being 2 to 3 levels higher than me at most to now being 7 levels higher than me, which made them virtually unkillable. So even though more legendaries dropped over the course of 4 hours than the entire roughly 28 hours of the main campaign, the game was much more painful to play with the Ultimate Vault Hunter mode activated, because I wasn't about to grind to level 50 and min-max my build just so that I can get a few more shiny guns to drop out of enemies. It just wasn't worth the time. I mean, this end game is so lazy, it's unreal. Can you imagine if in Strikes in Destiny, instead of being special missions designed just for that game mode, they were story missions that you had to do again while listening to every single fucking cutscene, most of which are unskippable Half-Life 2 style cutscenes. I just have to stare at characters talk for like 5 straight minutes. This is the worst padding imaginable. There was no thought put into this whatsoever. For all of you co-op slop game enjoyers, are you seriously entertained by watching other characters talk while you and your buddies just have to jump around and spin in circles or shoot the shit out of whatever boring ass stories you have to share with each other about your daily wage slave lives? It doesn't help that the mission they chose for the very first week of the game release, Shadow of the Mountain, half of that fucking mission is talking. I'm not joking. You only get one story mission a week with a legendary weapon drop at the end, and then you gotta wait for next week. This is garbage, period. Absolute fucking garbage. There's no excuse. But yeah, that's it for gameplay. Let's talk a little bit about the woke stuff. Is it woke? And yes, obviously, it's fucking Borderlands. Of course it is. But I guess maybe the longer question would be, is it less woke than the previous game? And believe it or not, the answer is yes. Even though I never finished Borderlands 3, I'm well aware of a lot of the content that's in the game, and a couple people in my audience have given me info on the previous one that is extremely cringy, like a gun that encourages you to get vaxxed, and a DLC that is purely dedicated to a gay wedding. Yeah, there's nothing that severe in this game from what I've seen. No, this is the more sterilized, subtle type of wokeness. Think Starfield, right? Seriously, look at the generic NPCs, man. What race are these people supposed to be? It looks like everyone is part African on this planet. Another good example, just take a look at the Vault Hunters themselves. Even the one white guy amongst them, Amon, who's clearly supposed to be inspired by Vikings, has a huge flat nose that is not phenotypically Nordic by any stretch of the imagination. Oh, and he's gay, too. Yes, the most physically masculine character in the game is a homosexual. Is that surprising to anybody? So clearly they just wanted to make a gay Kratos, who's an albino black man. I even heard rumors that originally he was black and they realized they didn't have any white characters in the game, so they just bleached him. Even the goth girl is Asian. The dude wearing armor is Hispanic, I think. And of course, we have the black female genius engineer. I swear to God, this shit is just spitting in your fucking face. The amount of times that I've seen recent media have a genius black woman character. I mean, we've got Ironheart, the replacement for Iron Man. We got that one bitch from The Boys who's like the smartest person on the planet. This shit is fucking parody tier, absolutely. Except it's the type of parody you can't point out, or everyone will call you racist. So it's an Emperor's New Clothes situation for all the normie cowards. I'm no coward, so I'll clearly point out how retarded this is. I'm not going to put IQ statistics on the screen because I don't think you need to see them. You already know. So yes, we have another of that character archetype. But I'd say generally the wokeness is a step down from the previous one because it's less in your face. There's a lot less propaganda, right? This game has that aura of corporate sterilization, where once upon a time, earlier in development before this huge pushback against wokeness, this was probably 10 times more offensive and in your face because Randy Pitchford knows you're going to buy this shit anyway. And judging by the Steam player counts, he was right to some degree. But we're currently in a pendulum shift of sorts, not a major one by any stretch. Anybody saying wokeness is dead is completely and utterly delusional. But this is the type of stuff that the normie is now conditioned to accept. Yes, your alien planets will be incredibly diverse, everyone will be ugly as shit, and you're not allowed to point it out because it's just fantasy or sci-fi. It can be anything. It has to be the exact racial demographics of New York City or San Francisco or Los Angeles or whatever. Yes, everyone must be a fucking city bug man and talk like a fucking champagne socialist millennial soy boy Redditor. That's not weird at all. I think it's completely pointless to give you a huge compilation of dialogue from this game because one, when I was playing with my buddies, we just talked over all of it anyway, and two, you've played a Borderlands game, you already know how cringe the dialogue is. There's not a single goddamn funny joke in this game. Here, I'll give you one painful long example that just kind of exemplifies every joke in this game.
Yeah, what is it? Another prisoner shipment?
Let me in. The password is honk shoe me.
Bingo!
Come on in. You never can be too careful with vault hunters running around. These passwords have gotten weird too. They used to be simple. Hail the Ripper Queen. Yeah, easy. But then Driller Hole started sleeping in an old-timey nightcap and demanding cutesy catchphrases, some of which were super copyrighted.
And yes, I'm well aware that there's going to be morons who say Borderlands was always woke because the female characters were always the strongest because the sirens in-universe have magic powers that make them like gods or whatever, right? I don't give a fuck about any of that, honestly. What I do care about is the game is just fucking obnoxious, dude. Like, even if you turn the audio off, this game has Half-Life 2 style cutscenes, about 100 of them. Again, I know this is typical of the series. I played the other games. Doesn't matter. I'm still going to complain about it because they shouldn't exist. Why am I supposed to just run around in a circle and jump and glide and shoot at nothing? Care about any of these ragtag group of characters that we help throughout the game. They're all fucking diverse and completely inoffensive and boring. In the second region of the open world, you end up meeting this guy named Quent, who's basically this useless gay guy, and that's the whole joke. He's good for nothing. Eventually, he gets kidnapped while you're working with Zane, one of the protagonists of the previous game. Oh, and his whole arc in this one zone is about him simping for a black woman. No, I'm not joking. Anyway, you go to rescue Quent, you fight your way through this dungeon, and at the end, you're actually given a time limit until he gets dropped in acid and dies. So, of course, he annoyed the shit out of me, so I let him die on purpose. I didn't even touch my mouse and keyboard for like a full minute. And, of course, the game acts like, oh my god, you did your best. This is such a tragedy, but it's not your fault. It's like, really? There's not even dialogue guilting the player for fucking up? This isn't player choice. There's no real consequences other than not having to hear more annoying-ass dialogue from this worthless, forgettable character. Why even put this choice in the game? Oh, and minor spoiler for the story, they bring Lilith back because she's a phoenix, so she can never really die, right? She just rises from the ashes, and she does basically nothing in the story. This feels like this was inserted late into development because people were so upset about her sacrificing herself in the last game. If anything, she's the setup for one of the secondary villains of the game. The incredibly annoying tutorial guy dies in the beginning, but actually he didn't really die. He got sent to the phase dimension and got a version of Lilith's powers, and he's, spoilers again, he's the post-credits boss, and this whole fucking subplot just adds up to nothing. Like, I don't even know why it's here. Nobody cared about RJ. Everyone forgot his name after 5 minutes. Even Claptrap jokes about that, yet they turn him into a villain for some reason. This plot sucks. Which, again, I wouldn't even care that the plot sucks if they didn't make us listen to it. Now, one thing that did kind of piss me off about the plot is that this Karen bitch, whose name I can't remember already, is a super genius inventor, and it turns out she's the one who invented the mind control neck chip things, and so everything is her fault. And she's centuries old, and she suddenly had a change of heart and became a good guy for some reason. I don't know. It's horrible. Absolutely horrible. This series got rid of any and all edginess, because no, gore doesn't count as edgy anymore because these are cartoon characters. This game is just deeply sanitized and incredibly forgettable. I would rather it be extremely cartoonishly woke, like Dustborn, of course, my favorite game of last year, than so forgettable and bland, and wow, it just makes the game so insufferable whenever you're not shooting something. And you know, it would be bad enough if the humor was just not funny. So yeah, Borderlands is still unfunny, it's still woke, it still has horrific pacing at certain points. Yeah, so in conclusion, should you buy Borderlands 4? Hell no, dude. I mean, if you're a Borderlands fan, you probably already bought it, so there's no hope for you. But for everyone else here who was, I guess, waiting to hear my opinion, which is, you know, probably like 5 of you at most, I think the rest are here just to hear me shit on this game. No, you shouldn't buy it. Your computer can't even fucking run it. Maybe it runs fine on console, I don't know. That shit is like horrifically upscaled and half the frames are fake anyway, but console players don't give a shit. I lied in the beginning and said this would be a shitpost, and it kind of turned a little bit more into a serious analysis. But ultimately, I think Borderlands just kind of sucks. I don't think there's any logical argument you can make in favor of these games that makes them seem better than any other co-op game on the market. In terms of shooters, I'd say almost every other shooter with co-op in it is better than this. Yeah, they have less replayability, but why do you want to replay garbage? I would say a game being bad makes it inherently not replayable, don't you think? Why the hell would you ever want to subject yourself to this torture again? Maybe if you could skip every cutscene, including the ones where you just walk around and do nothing while characters talk. That's absolutely still a cutscene, by the way. Arguably the worst cutscenes. If you could skip all of that, maybe you'd have an argument for just mindlessly shooting shit. I could sort of see the appeal. But no, Borderlands sucks dick, and it always has. This series has always been overrated. I know there's contrarians who say, well, actually the first game was good. But other than the plot being more serious, does it fix any of the other problems I just named with gameplay? No. It's still a looty-shooty game. What the hell, man? Do people just have no standards? This crawled up to 300,000 active players on Steam over the weekend. PC Master Race my ass. Trust me, man, there's better co-op games to play than this. I already named quite a few in this video. Lethal Company, Repo, Peak, Deep Rock Galactic. Hell, even Earth Defense Force is more fun than this. Yes, I'm serious. I'm not trying to be a contrarian. I genuinely had more fun playing Earth Defense Force 5 and 6 than this. And again, I'm sure there's going to be 100 normie comments on this video if this actually makes it into the algorithm, asking why did I bother reviewing this if I already knew I wouldn't like it? Well, the truth is, I've always wanted to shit on Borderlands since I was a teenager, because back when Borderlands 2 came out, I thought this series was incredibly overrated and boring. My mind has never changed. And I don't know, I just get a sick joy in shitting on things that normies like. You know, sue me, dude. Obviously, I'm not delusional. I don't think making this video is going to significantly reduce the sales of the game. That's not the objective here. The objective here is to just have fun with it, because I like bitching and moaning. I feel like I've said that a bunch of times over the years, yet people seem to think I'm constantly miserable. No, it feels good to let out my rage. I have to imagine I made teenage me proud by making this video,
Okay,
even if
Zane,
it
so
was
how crazy
basically
is this
slop,
plan
but
exactly?
Borderlands
On a scale
4
of
is
Zane
slop, so it
to
deserves
extra
a slop review. That's about it. See you next time, guys.
My plans are flawless works of art.
Need I remind you of the time you took me on a, quote, romantic moonlight drive, and our transportation was a wild horn strapped to a rocket?
And we ate those steaks for a month. Speaking of which, Lev, how's about that dinner?
I have a simple question for you. Do you think the Mona Lisa should be remade? I mean, think about it. It's been 500 years. I'm sure some better artists than Leonardo da Vinci have come along. I have a simple question for you. Do you think the Mona Lisa should be remade? I mean, think about it. It's been 500 years. I'm sure some better artists than Leonardo da Vinci have come along by now. There's probably better techniques, better technology. I mean, come on, bro. You expect me to look at the Mona Lisa with these graphics? Now, of course, I'm being facetious here, but I think you know where I'm going with this. I don't want to completely remake my Silent Hill 2 video, because I think all of you guys already know how I feel about video game remakes. I just don't think they should exist, for the most part. The only video games that really should be remade were the heavily flawed games that are either forever unfinished or were overly ambitious, and the technology at the time made it so the developers couldn't fulfill their dream game, their magnum opus. But it's obvious that whenever one of the games that is considered to be one of the greatest games of all time, for whatever reason, is being remade, it's obviously a cash grab. Or if we want to be charitable, you could say it's an attempt to revive a dead IP. And Konami themselves admitted that they want to revive Metal Gear, so it makes sense if they were to pick any game in the series to be remade, it would be arguably the most popular one. Now, I'm going to give you a crazy take right here. I think Metal Gear Solid 3 is a good game. I know, I'm a huge contrarian. Metal Gear Solid 3 being good? What? It's just movie game slop. Actually, there are some of you that legitimately believe that. That said, I don't think it's a perfect game. It's definitely not one of my favorite games. So this is not going to be like my Silent Hill 2 remake review, where I compare all the aesthetic changes between the original version of the game and the remake, because I only played MGS3 one time 11 or 12 years ago, and I'd forgotten most of it when I played through the remake, which was probably pretty evident if you watch my live stream gameplay. So I'm not making this video as a super fan who is here to nitpick every change from the original. As someone who is a casual fan of Metal Gear, I've got to say, outside of a few glaring issues that we'll get into, this is a pretty faithful graphical remake. And of course, the discussion around remakes is a little bit different when it is what some people would call a remaster. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole debate about what's a remaster, what's a remake, what's a reimagining, etc., etc. I'm just going to call this a graphical remake because essentially that's what it is. I think it might actually be more appropriate to call this a deluxe remaster, which is ironic given how crappy the Dead Rising remaster was last year, but that's more or less what this is. Now, before I get into the finer details of this remake, there is something important I need to bring up, even though I don't really want to. You may have noticed that the channel has been hurting quite a bit lately. There's been a lot of speculation as to why this is happening, and mine is far from the only channel to get hit lately after YouTube's latest algorithm change a few weeks back. But for some reason or another, my views have been in the toilet despite my engagement metrics being as high as always. I mean, you guys are always pretty good about liking the video and commenting. Whatever the reason may be, YouTube has recently added a hype feature that is specifically for any channel under 500,000 subscribers. So I guess I need to tell you guys to smash that hype button now, which sounds horrible, but maybe it'll help the channel. I'd really appreciate it if you hyped the video. God, I hate saying that, but I'd really appreciate it if you did. Okay, back to Metal Gear Solid Delta. It already kind of goes above and beyond by adding back the Guy Savage mini-game from the Dream sequence and the Ape Escape mini-game as well. These are things that a lot of modern remakes would have just cut without a second thought. So there's no doubt in my mind that this is an above-average remake that is being held back by a few glaring issues, the main one just being the performance. That's not going to be something I spend too much time on because I'm not a technical expert, but if you've ever watched the channel Nick Tech, I think he shows off pretty simply how poorly this game runs. It is very terribly optimized. I mean, even with a 5090, your GPU fans are shooting louder than a jet engine. Given how tiny the maps are in Metal Gear Solid 3, it's ridiculous. This isn't a sandbox game. Probably the biggest area is like a quarter square miles or something. The game is a bunch of tiny little maps with just a handful of enemies sprinkled, yet it can't even maintain 60 FPS with the best graphics cards on the market. And the frame drops sometimes happen at the most random times. Like, there's a small swamp area early on in the game, and there's rain pouring down around you, and if you just turn around the camera too fast, the frame rate drops to like 20 or even worse. I even had a bizarre crash early on where I just knifed a crocodile one too many times and the game crashed, and apparently this is a known issue that they're working on fixing. The worst part in the entire game is right near the end during the Shagohod boss battle. For some reason, the frame dips to ridiculous lows throughout like half the fight or more, which was starting to make the game borderline unplayable. And I'm sure many of you noticed this is a running theme with Unreal Engine 5 games. They're all poorly optimized, stutter like crazy, have insanely high system requirements, all have the same aesthetic style because they're outsourced to India and China where they have these asset farms. And that subject is probably worth its own video, but given how many more UE5 games are coming out the rest of this year, I might as well just wait until they all release, and then we'll talk about that subject in a future Gaming is Dying style video. So while sure, I can acknowledge good things about this remake, I think the graphics mostly look quite good, though a few of the characters look uncanny, particularly Ocelot, whose chin has been elongated to the degree that he now looks like Robbie Rotten, which is incredibly distracting. And the boss, although she always looked pretty androgynous, now just straight up looks like David Bowie. I mean, that's a man, dude. Another thing, too, is that it reuses all of the original voice lines and animations from the game. Reusing the voice acting is not so bad because I think they'd really screw it up, and they probably wouldn't rehire David Hayter, for being honest, which would completely ruin the experience. But at the same time, some of the voice acting was very questionable from the original, which, you know, was 2004. People's expectations weren't that high. But the boss is incredibly monotone throughout the entire game. It definitely just sounds like she's reading lines off a script.
I'm afraid I must ask you to show me some proof that you and he were not in collusion.
You don't trust me, is that it?
Not that. But he is your apprentice.
What do you want me to do?
And the same goes for quite a few other characters as well. I'd also say Ocelot comes across very flat at various times. So re-recording some of those lines would probably be pretty controversial, again, because it'd probably replace the actors, but at the same time, as long as they had the ability to switch between the old and new voice acting, I think that would actually add a lot to this remake. I mean, they already did that with the controls. You can do the legacy control scheme or the new control scheme, and it actually fundamentally changes a few aspects of the gameplay from what I've been told. I only played this with the new controls, which feel quite good, definitely better than the original. And I honestly don't really have any major complaints. I think the gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 3 is great. But as for the other issue, the reused animations, a lot of these look very goofy with the updated graphics. I mean, the whole PS2 motion capture rigging just looks pretty jank and over the top. And I know that Metal Gear has always been very over the top, basically just anime with a realistic art style. But yeah, some of this is a little cringe. Now, since you already know how I feel about remakes, and this is a purely graphical remake, so there's not even that much to actually talk about, you may just be wondering at this point, should you buy the game? Normally, I would save this question for the conclusion, but I'd say it's pretty important to just answer this right here. The simple answer is no, because it runs so poorly, and maybe they'll patch that and fix it, who knows. But as of right now, $70 for a game that might not even run on your computer, and from what I've heard, it also runs terribly on console. No, there's no reason to buy this. I'm sure there's going to be some people who want to buy this out of principle just because they want to revive the Metal Gear franchise. But as much as I don't like Kojima, is it really Metal Gear without Kojima as the director? Yeah, he's not the only reason these games are good. Obviously, he's not. All you have to do is take one look at the Death Stranding games to know that this is probably more likely a George Lucas situation where the people around him were just as important, if not more so, than he was at making sure the game is actually good. I don't feel like looking it up, but if we're just saying hypothetically it takes 50 to 100 people to make a good game 20 years ago, most of those people were important. This is not a time where you had a million fake tech jobs, basically professional babysitting for women and diversity hires. No, every person that worked on the Metal Gear games was important, but I digress. That subject could be its own video. Even though the short answer is no, you shouldn't buy the remake, the long answer is maybe a little bit more complicated, because some of you have probably never played Metal Gear Solid 3 or any of the Metal Gear games other than 5, so you might be wondering how well have those games aged. I'd say when it comes to gameplay, Metal Gear Solid 3 is definitely still a very fun game, especially when you've forgotten most of the game, so you still sort of have that joy of discovery of how to beat the creative bosses, right? My live stream chat basically bullied me into doing a non-lethal run of all the bosses, which I'd never done before, and so that provided a pretty unique challenge for me that made it a lot more interesting. As far as stealth games go, especially if we're comparing to modern ones, Metal Gear Solid 3, at least on hard difficulty, really doesn't give you a whole lot of player feedback. Some of it is borderline trial and error gameplay where the enemy sight lines are definitely above average for the stealth genre, I'll say, even with a great camo index. So you can get instantly spotted around a corner by an enemy that, unless you're playing the game at a snail's pace, you're not really given enough reaction time to avoid being immediately detected and setting off an alert status. An alert status is very annoying in this game because they send quite a few enemy reinforcements. For the hell of it, at one point I just tested how many they were going to send to my position. I just hid behind a doorway and shotgunned them as they opened the door over and over again and ended up killing like 20 people. And the weird thing too is that this is something that's not normal for Metal Gear because Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 have the Soliton radar, and so you have an overhead map that lets you see the enemy guards' locations and their sight lines. MGS3 doesn't have that, and on hard, it takes away two of your main ways of detecting enemy positions. You just have a personnel radar that just beeps when you get close to somebody, which is really not that helpful. Instead, you have the camouflage mechanic, which is kind of a mixed bag because despite there being so many different camo patterns, you're really only going to use like 3 for most of the game, unless you're doing a non-lethal run of the bosses, in which case they give you special ones that have additional abilities. This game even has a slight pay-to-win element to it because if you purchase the deluxe edition like I did to get the 2-day early access, it gives you some bonus camos, including 2 from Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, the game that takes place after 3. And one of them is an armor that makes it so you take significantly less damage from everything at the cost of moving a little bit slower. So I don't really know how to feel about that. The movement debuff does balance it out a little bit, so it's not straight up pay to win, but yeah, that feels a little bit scummy. Maybe not as scummy as the fact that early access for modern games exists at all. Hell, I probably could have made a video about that years ago. It's really annoying that someone like me doesn't get any review codes because of my reputation, and so I have to pay extra money to play these crappy modern games that I know I'm probably gonna hate just so I can get these videos out in a timely manner. The survival mechanics also feel pretty tacked on. I think having to eat food to keep your maximum stamina up is fine, not too intrusive, but the cure system is incredibly annoying, having you pause in the middle of gameplay just to activate several items that you're likely never going to run out of. It adds absolutely nothing to the game and just slows it down. Probably the only gameplay element that obviously wasn't very well thought out or tested, because honestly it should have just been thrown away. To not go into like this long diatribe about Metal Gear Solid 3's basic gameplay mechanics, if you played MGS5, it is somewhat similar, but definitely less forgiving, because it doesn't have that little slow-mo thing, I forget what it's called, when an enemy detects you. As soon as you get detected, that alert status is going off almost 100% of the time. Of course, the game is more forgiving in other ways. I mean, tranquilizing people is just incredibly overpowered in this game, period, because no guards find it weird when they find their teammates fall asleep out of nowhere, even in front of them. So you can just trank one guy, then trank another guy, then trank a third guy, and then you move on to the next zone, right? With the only limiting factor being your ammo and how many suppressors you have, which really isn't that bad, but it's plentiful enough that you don't even really need CQC to stealthily take down enemies. But I think despite their small size, or maybe because of their small size, the variety of maps is quite good in this game. The amount of enemies feels appropriate. There's enough gameplay variety in the sheer level design alone that it never gets boring. No, the gameplay is definitely not the problem with MGS3, it's the story. We'll get to that in a second. But the true highlight of the gameplay is the boss battles. This is something that the Metal Gear games have kind of always been famous for, that basically every single boss has something unique about them that changes up your playstyle at least a little bit, right? Whether it's a guy who surrounds himself in hornets to use his armor and then sends them as like homing bullets toward you, or a sniper who uses your own stealth abilities against you and you gotta use a directional microphone to hear his breathing, or a guy who climbs trees like a spider and shoots crossbow bolts and sets up traps all across the arena. I especially like that taking that guy down non-lethally requires you to leave poisonous food on the ground that he'll just pick up and eat. That's actually a pretty creative and fun solution for that fight. That said, I absolutely hate the Fury just shooting flamethrower blasts everywhere. Absolutely infuriating to take out non-lethally. The boss variety in this game is really good. They're pretty much all iconic, and they were easily the most memorable part of the game for me. In fact, I'd say most of what I remembered from my first playthrough was the boss fights, and I'd forgotten a lot of what happened in between. So even though this is definitely a stealth game, the mandatory boss battles are all great. You know, you never hear anybody complain about that, whereas if I remember back in the day, Deus Ex Human Revolution, when it came out, everyone hated the boss fights and wanted to play the game full stealth. Why is that? Well, the boss fights sucked. If the boss fights were good, like the Metal Gear games, I don't think anyone would complain about being forced out of stealth. Now, I'm not going to say every boss fight is good. I honestly don't think the last few are. And some people might find that heinous to suggest that the final boss is not good, but realistically, it's a glorified QuickTime event. And I think the remake even messed with the timing on the CQC counters. Maybe I'm just bad, my reflexes are getting slower than a snail's because I'm gonna turn 30, but I digress. Yes, you can defeat the boss by just shooting at her, but it's obvious the intended and much faster way is to counter her CQC attacks, and then you can even shoot her with a tranq dart afterward to make it go even faster. You could say thematically it's very satisfying considering she beats your ass like 4 times over the course of the game, which is another thing I'm going to get into shortly, don't worry. But it honestly isn't very fun, and it's not very challenging either, unless you count testing your reflexes as challenge. I don't. And so yeah, to conclude this segment, the gameplay in Metal Gear Solid 3 holds up very well in my opinion. It is still a very fun game. That doesn't mean you have to play the remake to experience it. You could just play one of the various other re-releases of this game over the past 20 years. But yes, Metal Gear Solid 3 is absolutely worth playing, without a doubt. That said, it's time we get into the story, because this is really where I have a problem. Metal Gear Solid 3 is essentially the origin story of the series. Instead of following the adventures of Solid Snake, we play as Big Boss, aka Naked Snake, the original one. And this is essentially a spy thriller set in the 60s during the Cold War. And the basic plot is actually very similar to Metal Gear Solid 1. We have to infiltrate a military base
Tell me
and
what
stop
I'm
an
looking at.
experimental weapon that can launch nukes stealthily, which could cause World War III and end the world, right? The spy thriller aspect is handled fairly well. Half the characters in the main
Okay,
cast are a double
blood is
agent
like
of some
nothing.
kind. My
What about
biggest
all that crap
problem
in the
is
way?
that as an adult, someone who's been exposed to left-wing propaganda for over a decade at this point, it is very obvious how left-wing Kojima has been since the beginning. This might actually be the most blatant piece of political propaganda he's ever produced. And I know people might think that sounds crazy given how obvious some of the symbolism in the two Death Stranding games are. But Metal Gear Solid 3 directly advocates for globalism through the most blatant Mary Sue character that may have ever existed outside of a teenage girl's fanfiction. Seriously, the boss is one of the worst girl boss characters that I've ever seen in my life. And I know you guys are going to think I'm exaggerating, especially if you haven't played the game in a long time. So I'm just going to give you a very basic description of her. The boss is a middle-aged woman who fought in World War II as part of the Special Cobra unit that helped end the war. She fought on the beaches of Normandy while she was pregnant. She is considered the mother of special forces. She helped develop the greatest martial art, at least for warfare, CQC, alongside Naked Snake, and despite the fact they worked together to develop it, she whoops his butt 4 times over the course of the game, at like 50 years old. I'm not even joking. Oh, and I almost forgot, on top of everything else I just named, the boss was also the first woman in space. Does it add anything to the story to have this extra little detail? Not really. Except it was part of her monologue about globalism being good, actually. Now, I know you're gonna get some Kojima fanboys that come up with all sorts of excuses how this isn't blatant left-wing propaganda, that not only is one of the greatest soldiers who ever lived a woman, but also she fought on the beaches of Normandy, dude. If this came out today, if Battlefield 7 or 8 or 10 or whatever had a campaign where a girl boss fought on the beaches of Normandy and stopped World War II, everyone would say it was woke. Every single person. The only reason that people wouldn't say it's woke is just because this game came out 20 years ago and because it's over the top in like anime, and so you're not supposed to take it seriously. And yet, Kojima fanboys 100% take it seriously. They follow this philosophy. Speaking of philosophy, her personal politics are straight up propaganda. She believes that the world was whole once upon a time. Her entire motivation as a character is to create world peace because that's how we used to be. We all used to love each other as human beings. That was never true at any point in human history. Are you kidding me? Globalism was never successfully implemented, thank God, and it sure as heck is not a good thing. Again, as an adult playing this game, it is so blatant how much propaganda is in here. It is crazy. And you can't even say that you enjoy this series in spite of the boss, because she inspired the entire events of the whole series after this. Not just Big Boss's actions, but also Zero's actions and that of the Patriots by extension, aka this universe Illuminati. The boss is arguably the most important character in Metal Gear outside of Big Boss himself. And people are just okay with this. There's other details too I left out as well. She's Ocelot's mother. Metaphorically, she's Big Boss's mother figure as well, on top of whooping his butt in multiple occasions, so read into that how you will. And Snake has to kill her at the end of the game. She has to be the fall guy to achieve world peace, even though that's not what happens. She thought that somehow getting access to billions of dollars was going to fix the world somehow. That's another incredibly naive left-wing way of thinking. Oh yes, if you just throw